communicating over here on his phone. Kyu Ching, who's a lecturer at USIU, and David Osiani, who is a governance expert and was telling us what he feels about how we have managed our locusts.
Yes, I was saying my ecologist friend was telling me, when the locusts come on 1 acre, 500,000. Boom. And the amount they eat in an hour is the amount that 5 elephants consume in a day.
Imagine that.
All right? So in an hour, they strip an acre or even more completely. And you see, when they feed on the maize, they just leave the stalk. Everything is gone, literally, including the shrubs nearby. Now, the tragedy, as she was explaining to me, is Kiunjuri and his team, before Munya took over to try and clean the mess, were using interventions that were systemic. That is to say, the spray they used to try and kill the locusts may have achieved killing the locusts, but they were in such a way that if they get to the soil, the uptake into the next plant will lead us to the place that aflatoxin has led us to. So if Kiunjuri was fired, there was a good reason to fire Kiunjuri. That level of incompetence and not being hands-on.
Right.
You know, when such a disaster hits you and you're the boss of that docket, you need to call the best brains. You need to summon FAO here. You need to summon all the agricultural experts and say, how do we handle this? What interventions are there? We just woke up with a few other people trying to make cuts and deals with other businessmen selling pesticides, got the wrong pesticides that are going to be tragic for the many years coming.
Right.
So I hope that the strategy has changed a bit. In fact, she told me, if we don't detain these locusts, if we don't stop them from getting to Nairobi, then we are done. The moment they get to Nairobi, unstoppable.
Yeah, but if you look at the map, they started from the north and were coming down.
Yes. Now,
the locusts,
sometimes I think Uhuru needs to go and pray for his country. It almost looks like a punishment, but that's as it is. We may not be able to deal with it. And what is the risk? The risk is we are going to be short on food in the next 1 or 2 years.
And I think as of now, the focus needs to be on that.
And if we don't address that now, and this is how government sometimes loots in these people, because they know that hunger is coming, we can foresee it. There is a potential in the next 1 year we will be short on food, but we are not doing anything about it now. So as we are dealing with the locust, we should already be putting, in place strategies to deal with a year later of
protect
hunger.
Ourselves from that.
I just want to reiterate something to Kenyans. Experts have said that the best and actually the only way to deal with locusts is to spray them from the air. So let's be clear on that bit.
But with what?
You see, the truth of the matter is, these are not things that the pesticide that worked last year is going to work. Look at mosquitoes in your house. Come on, you know this. You used to use Baygon. It stops. You go to Doom. You go to Ridsect. You go to
Johnson.
Yes. So let's be very clear that what the government is doing is the right thing. Now, what is going on wrong? That was wrong from the beginning. The East African states and the IGAD states failed to do what they should have done before. Recognize that this is a regional disaster. It is not a Somali problem, an Ethiopia problem, and now a Kenya problem, and Uganda with its small 1.8 billion thinks it's going to survive. That's not the strategy. What actually should happen, what is needed, is about 7 billion Kenya shillings across the region. What the region needs to do is realize if Kenya does not stop it, what is Uganda going to do? Let's just be very honest. What are they going to do? You understand? So they need to join forces and begin to pay for the fight in Kenya. And that's the thinking that's not there. We need to come together, whether it's in terms of aid, in terms of the planes that are flying, in terms of aid, in terms of the insecticides, in terms of technical expertise. They should also be sending their experts here so that they can learn
Right.
in case it starts from their end next time.
Yeah.
Oceania has talked about the probability of a food shortage. Well, I can guarantee you that even if the grasshoppers are stopped, because our rain patterns are unpredictable,
changing,
we are still going to have problems.
Yes.
East Africa is one of the most vulnerable places in the world to climate change. So the truth is, we do not need to prepare for food shortages for 2020. We need to prepare for food shortages for 2050. That's the truth.
Yeah,
truth
yeah,
of what we
but
have.
I like the dimension that has been brought. You know, how do Africans then galvanize around African issues?
Yeah.
Because that I have seen a movement in the AU trying to consolidate, you know, resources, trying to think as a group, you know, trying to do
the
things
Vision
together. So I think it's
2063
like
and
now, how do they now kind of tighten the ability to work as a continent, to move dynamics around the disasters facing us. Gone are the times where we'd look at to the west or east. So now we are saying here, how do we have the efficacy to deal with challenges as such?
Absolutely.
And I like that approach because, again, these locusts might not just be like you say, they will not be domiciled here. They might go to Uganda, then
They
go
will.
to Congo,
And they don't need
they
the
don't know
passport
where they are
already.
going. Yes,
So they don't
there's no
need
visa
visas.
or anything.
Yeah.
So I think that's the dynamic to
Yeah.
look at. And now, if it's something that's not been contained, so how are they coming in, you know, to avert this particular
yeah.
issue?
The spirit of Pan-Africanism
Isn't it
died.
dead though, David? Yeah.
No, but it's reviving.
we are
dead, come
reviving,
on,
albeit
yes.
a bit too slowly.
Yeah.
We are unable to even achieve political federation in East Africa only. You know, in a world that is continually borderless, in a world where people are moving towards, you know, borderlessness globally, we are still holding on to our Ugandan border. Never mind that if we got together with Kenya and Tanzania, then our goodness and resources will overflow into this whole space. And when you cannot get together to do that, look at what EU did. At the time, Greece was having its worst economic problem, just because of that borderlessness, that the EU was one unit. They were able to intervene in Athens, you know, in Greece, to save them from the crash, to lend them money. It had been mismanaged, but they knew that the ripple effect of a mismanaged single country in this whole area would be that if it is a trading partner for one of the neighboring countries, the neighboring country is going to suffer. There is no export, there is no import. The knock-off effect moves to the next country.
Like a
and so if we
domino.
looked at it that way and fixed the Locust invasion in that same manner back at home, I guarantee you, we will, Uganda, Tanzania, all these other countries will have saved themselves so much more if they
Right.
lent that 180 million shillings
To where the
to Kenya now
problem is.
and lent their innovative units and hubs to Kenya
Now,
to deal with it. they'll
I
have
would like
saved themselves more.
to bring in another dynamic as we conclude. You're an academic, right?
Yes.
So I would like, while we're talking about medicine, the right one, the wrong one, and predictions, there is a place for science, research, planning, and this has to do with making use of the academicians and the researchers that we have.
So-
are we on the right? Obviously not. but-
There's a lot of movement in terms of research in Africa. Next week or so, I'll be going to the US to talk about Africa Digital. It's an African Digital Conference in the US. So last year, there was a conference, Africa, something, it was about Pan-Africanism. And what I think is the problem with us as Africans is the psyche, that we are divided and yet we should be one. So dealing with mindset changes takes a behavior change or a mindset change. It doesn't take, conversations. No, it must seem to us that African problems must be dealt by Africans.
Yes.
And that's where research comes in. And that's where celebration, like we were really celebrating our scholars.
Yeah.
It was not, I tried to have a few people come to KTN, but I think the academia needs to come out and really brand themselves as to tell us more about their researches. But what I see is the challenge with African, is that we have not we are not good at positioning ourselves. We are not good at saying, you know, I can go out there and speak about an issue, I've researched on it, come out here, add value to conversations from these, you know, political experts, and say, you know, this is the way we have to go.
Oh, okay.
But the discussion on Pan-Africa is moving. It's just that the
I'm very
visibility
skeptical
is not there.
about that, but then...
No, in real sense, it is.
And
but it is not, it's the way they package it or don't package it that doesn't bring it out as clear.
A lot of people say Africa is not a poor, we don't have a poverty problem, we have a branding problem. Thank you very much to my panel. Mark Bichachi is a communication consultant, Koki Ching, lecturer at USIU, and David Osiani, a governance expert. Thank you so much for your insights. And that concludes our, you know, discussion.